The diamonds on her finger caught the light as she pointed. She doesn't belong here. Rebecca stood frozen at the edge of the ballroom, her homemade gift clutched against her chest like a shield. The colourful balloons that had seemed so welcoming minutes ago now floated above her like silent judges. Olivia's eyes darted between her mother's perfect posture and Rebecca's increasingly reddening face. The tiara on Mrs. Montgomery's head gleamed under the chandelier light, a crown for the Queen, who had just delivered her verdict. "But, Mother, she's my friend," Olivia whispered, her blue dress matching the tears welling in her eyes. Mrs. Montgomery's perfectly manicured hand patted her daughter's shoulder. "Darling, we discussed the guest list weeks ago. This is your 12th birthday celebration, not a charity event." Her voice carried across the marble floor with practiced precision, designed to wound without appearing to try. Rebecca felt 12 pairs of eyes turned toward her, 11 belonging to girls whose parents owned the companies that employed hers, and 1 belonging to Olivia, her supposed best friend. The handcrafted bracelet inside the small box in Rebecca's hands suddenly felt childish and inadequate, just like her second-hand dress that had seemed pretty enough in her bedroom mirror, but now revealed itself as hopelessly out of place among designer labels. "I'm sorry," Rebecca managed, her voice steadier than her hands. "I must have misunderstood the invitation." But there had been no misunderstanding. Olivia had slipped the embossed card into Rebecca's math textbook 3 weeks ago with a conspiratorial smile. "Don't tell anyone I invited you," she had whispered. "It'll be our secret until the day comes." Now, Rebecca understood why. "Marjorie, please show Miss Hamilton to the door," Mrs. Montgomery said to the uniformed housekeeper hovering nearby, "and ensure our other guests aren't disturbed by this unfortunate situation." As Marjorie gently guided her toward the grand entrance, Rebecca caught one last glimpse over her shoulder. Olivia standing beside her mother, one small hand raised slightly, as if to reach out, but not quite daring to extend fully. The golden number 12 glinted on the massive birthday cake, candles unlit, promises unbroken. "I'm truly sorry, miss," Marjorie murmured as they reached the imposing front doors. "If it helps, I've worked for the Montgomerys for 7 years and, well, the daughter isn't like her mother." Rebecca nodded, not trusting her voice. As the heavy door closed behind her, she heard the faint resumption of classical music and polite laughter. The garden path stretched before her, 3 miles of winding road between the Montgomery estate and the bus stop that would take her back to her side of town. The setting sun painted the clouds in pinks and golds that seemed to mock the darkness settling in her chest. Her mother had warned her that crossing social boundaries rarely ended well, but Rebecca had believed Olivia was different. For 7 months, they'd been inseparable at school, paired together for a science project that had turned into genuine friendship, or so Rebecca had thought. "Walk by faith, not by sight," her father always said during his Sunday sermons. The small wooden cross hanging beneath her collar pressed against her skin as she trudged down the winding driveway, a reminder of things unseen. By the time Rebecca reached the bus stop, darkness had fallen completely. She sat alone on the bench, the small gift box still clutched in her hands. With trembling fingers, she opened it one last time, the bracelet she'd spent weeks making from colored threads, each bead carefully selected to represent something about their friendship. The centerpiece was a small heart charm Rebecca had saved 3 weeks' allowance to purchase. A tear splashed onto the bracelet, and Rebecca quickly closed the box before it could be ruined. As the headlights of the approaching bus cut through the darkness, she slipped the box into her pocket and stood squaring her shoulders. The memory of Mrs. Montgomery's dismissive glance followed Rebecca home, haunting her through the weekend. Sunday morning found her sitting in the 3rd pew of Cornerstone Community Church, her father's voice washing over the congregation as he spoke about forgiveness. Rebecca stared at her hands, wondering how something that sounded so simple could feel so impossible. "Forgiveness isn't about the other person deserving it," Pastor Hamilton said, his weathered Bible open before him. It's about refusing to carry the weight of bitterness. Rebecca's mother squeezed her hand, somehow sensing her daughter's inner turmoil without knowing its cause. Rebecca had been too ashamed to tell her parents about Friday night, claiming instead that Olivia's party had ended early. After service, Rebecca retreated to the small room behind the sanctuary that served as both her father's office and the church library. She pulled her journal from the shelf, where she kept it hidden between commentaries nobody ever read. The leather cover was worn, a gift from her grandmother 3 birthdays ago. April 17th. I don't understand why some people have so much when others have so little. Mrs. Montgomery's diamond earrings probably cost more than Dad makes in a year at the church. Her house has 12 bathrooms. 12! Our whole apartment could fit in their kitchen. But I'm not jealous of their things. I'm jealous of their certainty. Mrs. Montgomery knows exactly where she belongs in the world. I thought I did too until yesterday. Olivia looked so beautiful in her blue dress, like a princess from a fairy tale. For a moment, when I first arrived, her face lit up seeing me. Then her mother noticed me standing there. Dad always says to pray for those who hurt you, but what do you pray for someone who has everything? What could Mrs. Montgomery possibly need that she doesn't already have? Rebecca closed the journal, unable to continue. The church bells chimed, signaling noon. Her father would be finishing with the after-service meeting soon, and they'd walk the 7 blocks home together as they did every Sunday. "Rebecca, are you in here?" The voice startled her. It wasn't her father's deep baritone, but a girl's hesitant question. Rebecca quickly shoved the journal back between the books and turned to find Olivia Montgomery standing in the doorway, still wearing her church clothes, a designer dress that made the small office seem suddenly shabby. "How did you find me?" Rebecca asked, unable to mask her surprise. Olivia stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I looked up your dad online. There aren't many Pastor Hamiltons in this district." She twisted her hands together, a nervous gesture Rebecca had never seen from the usually confident girl. "I'm so sorry about Friday. I didn't know what Mother would do." Rebecca stood, putting the desk between them. "Why did you invite me if you knew she wouldn't approve?" "Because you're my friend, my only real friend." Olivia's eyes welled with tears. "Everyone else just wants to be around me because of my parents' money or our house or stupid reasons. You're the only one who talks to me like I'm a person." The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken hurts and tentative hope. "Your mother made it very clear what she thinks of me," Rebecca finally said. Olivia reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "I brought your gift. I wanted to give it to you on Friday, but after what happened..." She placed it on the desk. "Mother doesn't know I'm here. Our driver thinks I'm at Sunday school at St. Bartholomew's." Rebecca stared at the envelope without touching it. "Please, Beck, I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. Just don't give up on me yet." Olivia's voice broke on the last word. The nickname, Beck, pierced through Rebecca's defenses. Only Olivia called her that, had coined it during their first study session when she claimed Rebecca was too formal for friends. Rebecca reached for the envelope, opening it carefully. Inside was a silver chain with a small star pendant. "It's beautiful," she admitted. "Turn it over," Olivia urged. Engraved on the back were 2 words, "True North." "Because you always help me find my way," Olivia explained, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Even when I get lost in Mother's world." Rebecca felt the hard edges of her hurt begin to soften. "I was going to give you this." She pulled the small box from her desk drawer where she'd placed it that morning, unable to leave it at home, but unwilling to carry the reminder of rejection. Olivia opened it, her eyes widening at the handmade bracelet. "You made this? It's not expensive. It's perfect." Olivia slipped it onto her wrist immediately. "Will you help me clasp it?" As Rebecca secured the bracelet around Olivia's wrist, she noticed something she hadn't before. Faint bruising around Olivia's upper arm, the size and shape of fingerprints. Olivia quickly tugged her sleeve down when she saw Rebecca's gaze. "What happened?" Rebecca asked. "Nothing. Mother was just upset about some party arrangements." Olivia's casual tone couldn't quite mask the tension beneath it. It doesn't matter. But it did matter. In that moment, Rebecca saw past the designer clothes and privileged lifestyle to something broken beneath the surface, something that all the Montgomery money couldn't fix. "Do you want to stay for lunch?" Rebecca offered impulsively. "My mom always makes enough for an army on Sundays." Olivia's smile could have lit the darkened corners of the small office. "I'd like that, but I'll need to be back at St. Bartholomew's by 2 o'clock when James comes to pick me up." As they left the church together, Rebecca felt the weight of Friday night lifting slightly. Her father's sermon echoed in her mind. Sometimes God places people in our lives not because we need them, but because they need us. The Hamiltons' apartment felt particularly small with a Montgomery inside it. Olivia tried to hide her surprise at the modest furnishings, but her eyes widened at the living room that doubled as a dining room, the kitchenette visible through an archway, and the narrow hallway leading to 2 small bedrooms. Mrs. Hamilton, however, welcomed Olivia with the same warmth she showed everyone. "Any friend of Rebecca's is family here," she said, setting an extra plate at their small table. Lunch was simple, homemade vegetable soup and fresh bread, but the conversation flowed more easily than Rebecca had expected. Olivia seemed to relax as the meal progressed, even accepting seconds of soup with genuine enthusiasm. "This is delicious, Mrs. Hamilton," she said. "Our chef never makes soup like this." "That's because love is the secret ingredient," Mrs. Hamilton replied with a wink, "and that can't be found in any cookbook." After lunch, Olivia helped clear the table, despite Rebecca's protests. As they washed dishes side by side, Olivia whispered, "I wish I could stay longer." "You could come back," Rebecca suggested cautiously. "Next Sunday, maybe?" "I'd have to lie again about where I'm going." Olivia's hands stilled in the soapy water. Mother would never allow it if she knew. Pastor Hamilton, overhearing as he entered the kitchen, spoke gently. "The truth has a way of setting us free, even when it seems frightening." Olivia looked up at him, something like hunger in her expression. "Your sermon today, the one about forgiveness, does that really work? Forgiving people who don't deserve it?" "Forgiveness isn't about deserving," he replied, echoing his earlier message. "It's about healing. Sometimes the person who benefits most is the one doing the forgiving." When it was time for Olivia to leave, Rebecca walked her to the bus stop. They sat side by side on the bench, 7 minutes until the bus would arrive to take Olivia back to her world of privilege and pretense. "I never asked," Rebecca said suddenly. "What did you wish for when you blew out your candles?" Olivia's expression clouded. "We haven't done the cake yet. Mother rescheduled it for next weekend after what happened." She fidgeted with the friendship bracelet. "But I know what I'll wish for when the time comes." The approaching bus cut their goodbye short. As Olivia stood to leave, she pressed something into Rebecca's hand, a folded note. "Don't read this until I'm gone," she whispered. Rebecca watched the bus disappear around the corner before unfolding the paper. "Beck, there's something wrong at home. I don't know how to explain it, but things are getting worse. Mother's friends aren't really friends at all. I've heard conversations I shouldn't have. I'm scared. If I don't come back next Sunday, will you wait for me at the big oak tree in Westfield Park at 3 p.m? It's the only place I can think of where no one would look for me. Please don't tell anyone about this note." Liv Rebecca read the note twice, her heart pounding. What had Olivia heard? What was happening in that massive house behind its manicured hedges and security gates? The next 7 days passed in agonizing slowness. Rebecca checked her phone constantly for messages from Olivia, but none came. At school, Olivia was mysteriously absent, reported sick with a severe flu according to the attendance office. On Wednesday evening, the Cornerstone Community Church gathered for their weekly preparation for the Spring Festival, an annual event that brought together churches from across the city to serve the community. Despite her worry for Olivia, Rebecca threw herself into the preparations, helping to organize the children's activities. "You seem distracted," her father noted as they hung colorful banners across the church lawn. "Is everything all right?" Rebecca considered telling him about Olivia's note, but remembered the plea for secrecy. "Just thinking about a friend," she said instead. Thursday night brought a severe storm. Thunder rattled the windows of the Hamilton apartment as rain pounded against the glass. Rebecca lay awake, listening to the fury of nature and wondering if the storm reached all the way to the Montgomery estate on the other side of town. Friday morning dawned clear, but with evidence of the storm's violence. Downed branches, flooded street corners, and power outages in several neighborhoods. Rebecca helped her father deliver emergency supplies to elderly church members whose homes had been affected. They were returning to the church, their small car loaded with wet tarps and tools, when Rebecca spotted a sleek black luxury sedan pulled to the side of the road, hazard lights blinking. A woman in an expensive coat stood beside it, phone pressed to her ear, obvious frustration in her posture. "We should stop," Pastor Hamilton said, already slowing down. Rebecca's stomach dropped as they pulled closer. Even with her back turned, there was no mistaking Victoria Montgomery's regal bearing. "Dad, that's—" Rebecca began, but her father had already parked and was rolling down his window. "Having car trouble, Mum? Can we help?" Mrs. Montgomery turned, her expression shifting from annoyance to surprise. She didn't immediately recognize Rebecca in the passenger seat of the modest sedan. "My car simply stopped running. I've called my service, but they're dealing with emergencies all over the city because of this dreadful storm. We're heading to the church just up the road," Pastor Hamilton offered. "You're welcome to wait there until your service arrives. It might be more comfortable than standing in the street." Mrs. Montgomery hesitated, clearly weighing her limited options. Another roll of distant thunder seemed to make the decision for her. "That would be acceptable. Thank you." Only when she slid into the back seat did her eyes meet Rebecca's in the rearview mirror. Recognition dawned slowly, followed by a tightening of her perfect features. "You're the girl from Olivia's party." Rebecca nodded, unable to form words around the knot in her throat. "Rebecca is my daughter," Pastor Hamilton said, either missing or choosing to ignore the tension crackling between them. "I'm Pastor David Hamilton of Cornerstone Community Church." "Victoria Montgomery," she replied stiffly. "Your daughter and mine attend school together." The short drive to the church stretched into an eternity of awkward silence. When they finally arrived, the parking lot was filled with volunteers unloading supplies for the festival. Tables were being set up, despite the damp ground, and a team was erecting a large tent in case the rain returned. "What's all this?" Mrs. Montgomery asked as they exited the car. "Preparations for our spring festival," Pastor Hamilton explained. 7 churches come together each year to provide food, clothing, and services for families in need. We're expecting around 300 people tomorrow. Mrs. Montgomery followed them into the church, her designer heels clicking against the worn linoleum floor of the entrance hall. Rebecca excused herself quickly, retreating to the sanctuary where volunteers were assembling care packages. She had just finished her 12th package when her father appeared at her side. "Mrs. Montgomery would like to speak with you," he said quietly. "She's in my office." "Dad, you don't understand. I understand that something happened between you two, and now there's an opportunity to address it. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." Rebecca recognized the scripture from Romans and sighed. Her father's ability to quote perfectly applicable Bible verses in any situation was both impressive and occasionally inconvenient. Mrs. Montgomery stood by the window of the small office, examining the collection of family photos on the bookshelf. She turned when Rebecca entered, her expression unreadable. "Your father tells me you're helping organize tomorrow's event," she said, after an uncomfortable silence. Rebecca nodded. "The children's activities. Games, face painting, that sort of thing. And this is all volunteer work? No one is paid?" "It's a ministry, Mrs. Montgomery. People give their time because they want to help others." The older woman's gaze sharpened. Why? The simple question caught Rebecca off guard. Because that's what we're called to do. To serve others, especially those in need. Mrs. Montgomery turned back to the window, watching the volunteers working in the parking lot below. Olivia has been asking about you. She wore some handmade bracelet to dinner last night. My husband thought it was charming. I recognized your handiwork. Rebecca remained silent, uncertain where this conversation was heading. She told us she's been attending a Bible study with friends from school. I assumed it was at St. Bartholomew's, where many of our circle send their children. Mrs. Montgomery's perfectly manicured fingers tapped against the windowsill. I now suspect she's been less than truthful about her whereabouts. Mrs. Montgomery, I don't approve of deception, Miss Hamilton, even when it comes from my daughter. She turned back to face Rebecca. However, I'm beginning to wonder if I've been hasty in certain judgments. Before Rebecca could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window they could see a tow truck arriving, followed by a familiar black sedan. Mr. Montgomery's car, with Olivia in the passenger seat. That would be my husband, Mrs. Montgomery said, collecting her purse. Thank you for your hospitality, however unexpected. Rebecca followed her downstairs and outside, where Olivia was already rushing toward her, heedless of the puddles soaking her expensive shoes. Back! Olivia threw her arms around Rebecca. I've been trying to call you all week, but Mother took my phone after she found out I snuck out on Sunday. Mr. Montgomery approached more sedately, his hand extended toward Pastor Hamilton. Richard Montgomery, thank you for looking after my wife. Rebecca was struck by how different he seemed from his wife, his smile genuine, his demeanor lacking the rigid formality that characterized Mrs. Montgomery. He noticed the volunteers and their work with evident curiosity. You've quite an operation here, he observed. Victoria mentioned a community festival? Tomorrow from 10 until 4, Pastor Hamilton confirmed. You're welcome to attend, of course. Mrs. Montgomery began to decline, but Mr. Montgomery spoke over her. We'd be delighted, wouldn't we, Victoria? The look that passed between husband and wife contained volumes of unspoken communication. To Rebecca's surprise, Mrs. Montgomery eventually nodded. Perhaps for a short while. As the Montgomerys prepared to leave, Olivia lingered beside Rebecca. I need to talk to you, she whispered urgently. It's about what I wrote in the note. I've found out more. Tomorrow, Rebecca promised. During the festival. Olivia squeezed her hand. Don't tell anyone yet, especially not your parents. The cryptic warning followed Rebecca through her evening preparations and into a restless night. What had Olivia discovered? Why the secrecy? Saturday dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for the spring festival. Rebecca arrived at the church at 7, helping to arrange the final details before the gates opened at 10. By 9:30, a line had already formed. Families from the surrounding neighborhoods, many of whom Rebecca recognized from previous years. The festival was in full swing by 11, the church grounds transformed into a vibrant community space. Children laughed as they played games and had their faces painted, while adults visited booths offering everything from free haircuts to legal advice. The food tent served continuous meals, and the clothing distribution area buzzed with activity. Rebecca checked her watch for the 12th time. The Montgomerys had not yet arrived, and her assigned shift at the children's area would end at noon. Had they changed their minds? Just as she was losing hope, a murmur rippled through the crowd. The Montgomery family had arrived, all three of them dressed in casual clothes that still somehow screamed expensive. Mrs. Montgomery looked uncomfortable but determined, her husband's hands supportively at the small of her back. Olivia practically bounced with excitement. Pastor Hamilton greeted them warmly, offering to show them around. Rebecca watched from her station, finishing up a butterfly design on a little girl's cheek before her replacement arrived to take over. She had just removed her apron when Olivia appeared at her side. "Can we talk now?" she asked, her voice low. Rebecca nodded, leading her friend to a quiet spot behind the church building. "What's going on, Liv?" Your note scared me. Olivia glanced around to ensure they were alone. It's about my father's business, the investment firm. I overheard Mother and her friends talking at my birthday party after you left. They mentioned something called Operation Shepherd and how it was fleecing the flock. Rebecca frowned. What does that mean? I didn't know at first. But then last week I snuck into Father's home office and found documents. Olivia's voice trembled. They're targeting churches, Beck. Small ones like yours. Offering investment opportunities that aren't real. Father's company takes their money, and then the churches lose everything. The blood drained from Rebecca's face. Are you sure? Olivia nodded miserably. Cornerstone is on the list. Someone named Elder Thomas has already invested the building fund, $12,000. Rebecca felt physically ill. Elder Thomas was her father's closest friend on the church board, a good man who sometimes got carried away with enthusiasm. The building fund had been accumulated over 7 years of careful saving. We have to tell my dad, Rebecca said, already turning toward the festival. Olivia caught her arm. Wait, there's more. I don't think my father knows what's really happening. The documents I found were hidden in a false bottom drawer, and they had another man's name on them, someone called Shepherd. But Mother knows. She's been helping cover it up. Rebecca's mind raced. This explained the tension she'd sensed between Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery earlier, and perhaps even Mrs. Montgomery's unexpected appearance at the church. Is that why you wanted me to wait at the park tomorrow? To tell me this? Olivia nodded. But now they're here, and I'm afraid. What if Mother realizes I know? What if... Rebecca! Olivia! Are you back here? Both girls jumped at Mrs. Montgomery's voice. She appeared around the corner, her expression shifting from curiosity to suspicion at their guilty faces. What are you two whispering about? She demanded. Rebecca stepped forward, drawing herself up to her full height, still several inches shorter than Mrs. Montgomery. We know about Operation Shepherd, she said, her voice steadier than her racing heart. We know about the investment scam targeting churches. Mrs. Montgomery's perfect composure cracked for just an instant, a flash of something like fear crossing her features before the mask slipped back into place. I don't know what you're talking about. Olivia, come with me. We're leaving. No, Mother. Olivia moved to stand beside Rebecca. I found the documents in your private safe. I know you've been helping Mr. Shepherd use Father's company to steal from these people. People like Rebecca's family who've never done anything to hurt you. You went through my personal belongings. Anger flashed in Mrs. Montgomery's eyes. How dare you? How dare you? Olivia's voice rose. These people have nothing compared to us, and you're helping steal what little they have. Why? We don't need more money. You don't understand the complexities of adult relationships, Olivia. Sometimes compromises must be made to maintain our position. What position? Rebecca interjected. The position of having 7 bathrooms while families here struggle to pay rent. The position of throwing away food that could feed people who are hungry. Mrs. Montgomery turned her cold gaze on Rebecca. You know nothing about my world. And you know nothing about mine. Rebecca replied, reaching for the small wooden cross that hung beneath her collar and pulling it into view. But I'm willing to show you, if you're brave enough to see it. Something shifted in Mrs. Montgomery's expression, a crack in the perfect facade, revealing uncertainty beneath. What do you mean? Come to our church tomorrow, Rebecca said. Not for a festival or because your car broke down, but to actually see what we believe. To understand why we do what we do, why we help people even when there's nothing in it for us. Mrs. Montgomery laughed, but the sound held no humor. You want me to attend your little church service? Whatever for? Because right now you're standing at a crossroads, Rebecca said quietly. You can continue down the path you're on, helping steal from people who have little to begin with, or you can choose a different way. But you can't make that choice if you don't understand what you're destroying. Mother, Olivia said, her voice softening, please, just come once, for me. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken fears and fragile hope. Victoria, Are you back here? Mr. Montgomery's voice broke the tension. He appeared a moment later, his expression brightening at the sight of them. Ah, there you all are. I've been looking everywhere. You won't believe what they're doing here. There's a medical team providing free checkups and a group of lawyers offering estate planning advice. It's remarkable. Mrs. Montgomery's face was unreadable as she looked between her enthusiastic husband, her defiant daughter, and Rebecca. Richard, there's something we need to discuss. About Operation Shepherd. Mr. Montgomery's smile faltered. What about it? Not here, she said. At home. As the Montgomerys departed, Olivia glanced back at Rebecca with a mixture of fear and determination in her eyes. Rebecca could only hope she'd planted a seed that might somehow take root in the stony ground of Victoria Montgomery's heart. That evening, Rebecca told her parents everything. Pastor Hamilton listened gravely, then made several phone calls to church board members, including Elder Thomas. The news was worse than they'd feared. Not just Cornerstone, but 7 churches in the district had invested building funds, benevolence accounts, and mission offerings with Montgomery Investments' new high-yield church growth program. What happens now? Rebecca asked as her parents prayed together in their small living room. We trust God, her father replied simply, and we prepare to tell the congregation tomorrow. Sunday morning arrived with a weight of dread. Rebecca dressed for church mechanically, her thoughts with Olivia. Had her friend faced consequences for her revelation? Would the Montgomerys actually show up as discussed? The service was scheduled to begin at 10, but by 9:45, the parking lot remained half empty. Many families were likely still recovering from yesterday's festival efforts. Rebecca sat in the third pew, watching the door, torn between hope and resignation. At 9:57, just as the worship team took their places, the church doors opened. A ripple of whispers spread through the congregation as Victoria Montgomery entered, alone and dressed in a simple grey suit that probably cost more than the church's monthly utilities. She hesitated at the back, clearly uncomfortable. Rebecca rose and walked down the aisle to greet her. "You came," she said, unable to hide her surprise. "I told Olivia I would." Mrs. Montgomery glanced around the modest sanctuary. She wanted to come too, but she and Richard are meeting with the authorities this morning about Operation Shepherd. Rebecca's eyes widened. The authorities? My husband knew nothing about the fraud. When I told him last night, She paused, composing herself. He contacted the SEC immediately. It appears I've been an unwitting accomplice to a rather sophisticated scheme. Mr. Shepherd has been arrested, and Richard is doing everything possible to recover the stolen funds. And you came here because... Mrs. Montgomery met Rebecca's gaze directly for perhaps the first time. Because I need to understand what I almost destroyed, and because I owe you an apology, several in fact. The service began with worship, the small band leading songs that Mrs. Montgomery clearly didn't know but attempted to follow. During the greeting time, several church members approached her with genuine welcome, unaware of her identity or connection to their financial crisis. When Pastor Hamilton took the pulpit, he made no mention of the investment fraud, focusing instead on his planned sermon about seeing beyond appearances to the heart. As he spoke, Rebecca watched Mrs. Montgomery's face, noting how she leaned forward during certain points, her expression thoughtful. After the service, Mrs. Montgomery approached Pastor Hamilton. "I believe you're aware of my connection to recent events," she said quietly. He nodded. "Rebecca told us yesterday. Then you know that your church and others have been victims of fraud. What you may not know is that the process of making restitution began at 7 this morning. My husband has liquidated several personal accounts to cover the losses, while the legal system works to recover the stolen funds." Pastor Hamilton's expression revealed nothing but compassion. That must have been a difficult decision. Less difficult than facing the consequences of continuing down the path we were on. She glanced at Rebecca, who stood nearby. "Your daughter helped me see some truths I've been avoiding for many years. Truth has a way of finding us when we need it most, he replied. Mrs. Montgomery reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope. This contains a cashier's check for the full amount taken from your building fund, plus additional funds I hope you'll use for your community programs. It's not charity, Pastor Hamilton. It's restitution. As she handed over the envelope, the sleeve of her jacket rode up, revealing the edge of a bruise similar to the one Rebecca had seen on Olivia's arm. Mrs. Montgomery quickly adjusted her sleeve, but not before Pastor Hamilton noticed. Mrs. Montgomery, he said carefully, our church offers more than financial assistance. We also provide safe spaces for those who need them, no questions asked. Something vulnerable flickered in her eyes. I appreciate that, but my situation is complicated. Few situations are simple, he acknowledged, but none are beyond hope. Later, as Rebecca walked Mrs. Montgomery to her car, the older woman seemed reluctant to leave. Will you be at school tomorrow? She asked. Olivia will be looking for you. Rebecca nodded. Will she be okay after everything that's happened? Olivia is stronger than I've allowed her to be, Mrs. Montgomery admitted. Stronger than I've been, certainly. She hesitated, then added, We'll be staying with my sister for a while, until certain matters are resolved. Understanding dawned on Rebecca. Is Mr. Montgomery? My husband is a good man caught in a bad situation, Mrs. Montgomery said firmly. The pressure of what's happened with his company, it's been difficult for everyone. Rebecca thought of the bruises, the tension she'd sensed in the Montgomery household. If you need anything, what I need, Mrs. Montgomery interrupted, is to understand what makes your family different from mine. We have everything money can buy, yet Olivia finds more joy in your small apartment than in our entire estate. She gestured toward the modest church building. I want to understand what you have that we lack. Rebecca touched the wooden cross at her neck. Would you like to come back next Sunday and find out? For the first time in their acquaintance, Victoria Montgomery smiled genuinely. I believe I would. 1 week later, Rebecca sat in the third pew beside Olivia, watching as Mrs. Montgomery spoke with church members before the service. Gone was the designer suit, replaced by a modest dress that still managed to look elegant. The tiara and diamonds had been left behind, but something new shone in her eyes, a tentative peace that hadn't been there before. Mr. Montgomery had not accompanied them, having temporarily stepped down from his company while investigations continued. But according to Olivia, he had given his blessing for their attendance, promising to join them when the immediate crisis passed. As the congregation rose for the first worship song, Rebecca felt Olivia slip something into her hand, a small, folded note. Beck, Mother wanted me to tell you. Sometimes the greatest treasures aren't kept in vaults, but in hearts that choose to forgive. Thank you for showing us the way home. Liv Rebecca smiled, tucking the note into her Bible as the music swelled around them. The wooden cross rested against her skin, no longer hidden beneath her collar, but worn proudly in the open, a symbol not of religion, but of relationship, the kind that could bridge worlds as different as the Hamiltons and the Montgomerys. In the pew ahead of them, Mrs. Montgomery stood with her eyes closed, her hand slightly raised in a gesture of surrender, or perhaps reaching toward something that all her wealth had never been able to purchase. Something freely given to anyone willing to receive it, something like grace.